Thanks to homeglow for sponsoring today's video. More on them in just a bit. This time of year is all about keeping the garden and kitchen going. So today I'm going to share with you a few things I'm doing in the garden and of course share some healthy food straight from the garden. I love to head out to the garden first thing in the morning. As soon as that sun has come up and I've had my morning cup of coffee, I love to come out here before the sun gets to the veggies and see what I can pick to eat that day. Right now there's a ton of Dinosaur kale, lots of different lettuce, and cabbages that are just starting to form these nice beautiful heads in the middle. And so I like to come out here and every week or so I'll go to the edges of my cabbage plants and pull out about a third of the outer leaves. That way they're not giving all of their energy to producing the beautiful leaves and foliage, but they're just giving as much energy as they can to produce that beautiful head of cabbage. So I like to just pull those off and throw them in the compost. All this really glorious dinosaur kale. So I'm gonna come in here and on each plant I'm gonna trim some off and we're gonna make a meal out of this. And I'm gonna cook it today in the slow cooker and then we'll have it tomorrow. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull a lot of this stuff off around the outside, and I like to leave the ones growing in the middle. I'm in the high tunnel right now and I think I got enough kale for my slow cooker meal I'm doing. This is a lot of dinosaur kale. So I'm gonna grab some bok choy that also needs to be picked in here in the high tunnel. I have some in my outdoor beds out there, the raised beds, but they are not ready yet. So I have stuff in here that we planted earlier that is definitely ready to pick. So I have some beautiful bok choy that is mature and ready to eat. So I'm gonna get that and I'm gonna cook that for dinner tonight. And I'm also gonna grab a few of these flowers that we have planted in here and make myself a little vase to freshen up the kitchen. All these gorgeous zinnias, and then back here is where I have my bok choy. And a lot of it looks pretty good. Some of it's been eaten a little bit, and I'm just gonna pull it. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. I'm gonna snip off the roots here. And look at that! That is a beautiful bok choy. I love how beautiful the leaves are. A few of them have been eaten, but I'll just trim those off in the kitchen. But that is gonna be beautiful for dinner. I've been spending so much time in the garden and doing little garden harvest projects where you have to go in and harvest a bunch of things and store them properly. So this spring has been super busy because I've just been in the garden so much, and I'm normally the kind of person that wants to do a huge refresh on my house in the spring because I feel really inspired to just get the house going for the year. It kind of awakens after winter and then I'm ready to start getting it into order and refreshing my spaces. And that's why I want to share with you today's video sponsor, because I recently tried out homeglow, which if you've never heard of it's a home service platform where you can find really highly rated cleaning professionals near you, so you're supporting your locals. I had somebody come to my house and help me organize a space in my front room that I use for all of my kind of food blogging gear and all of my extra dishes. It's been a huge project that I've been putting off for so long because I just wasn't sure how to organize all these kind of miscellaneous things. And so I had someone come in from homeglow and I gave her such minimal direction and she ran with it and did a way better job than I could have ever done. done, and it took the headache and stress of it off my shoulders, and I feel like a new person. And after that, she came into my kitchen, she wiped things down, she steam mopped the floors, and my whole house just feels so much homier because of that. You simply go to HomeGlow's website and you'll schedule your cleaning, you'll choose duration, the kind of things that you like. You can really make it work for you and your busy schedule, which I know is important. So when you get the membership, it saves you $30 a month on future cleanings. So then you can book as many cleanings as you want, starting at $19 an hour. So take home cleaning off of your plate this spring and use HomeGlow. You can go to homeglow.com/healthy Elizabeth or scan the QR code here on screen. That way you can get your first 3 hours of cleaning for only $19. So I hope that you try it out, and thank you so much to HomeGlow for sponsoring this video. I just got back inside from being out in the garden and it is so hot, but I have all my produce here. I've got this bok choy that I'm gonna use for dinner tonight, and then probably a pound, maybe 2 pounds. I should weigh it in a bowl, but I have a ton of dinosaur kale. There's more buried in here. And then I grabbed a few flowers and I'm just gonna make a quick vase. I love doing these either just in a mason jar or some sort of glass jar. So I'm just gonna peel off some of the stems and stick them in here. And I love just having stuff like this on my windowsill. It just brings in those really beautiful spring and summer touches. And it's so inexpensive to grow your own flowers versus getting them at the store. So anytime I can pick fresh flowers from my own garden or from the kids' garden, in this case, in the high tunnel, I love doing that. So even just simple, a few little stalks of it, and you just put that in a little vase and then put that on the windowsill. And I love how kind of whimsical it is, how they just kind of fold over and they look a little bit wild and undone. I definitely love that look. It's so beautiful. So for now, I'm gonna set this kale aside. If I was gonna make a salad or something raw out of it, I would soak off the heat, which means just leaving it in some cold water just in the sink to help it kind of plump up and rehydrate. But since I'm gonna slow cook it anyway, I don't need to worry about it plumping back up. So I'm gonna leave it in the crate for a while. So this is my first time growing bok choy, and I can't believe how easy it is to grow. I put it in the ground and it just took off, and I probably should have picked it a few days earlier because there definitely are some bug bites here and there on the leaves, but that's pretty easy to trim off. So I'll trim that off and I'll cook the stems and the little leafy bits. So I'm gonna start by getting this into my sink because it's kind of getting dirt everywhere. So let's go ahead and wash that off and get them prepped, and then I'll tell you what we're gonna do for dinner tonight. I'm gonna go ahead and cut off the skin. It has all that dirt on it, so I'm gonna go ahead and rinse this really, really well. Now I've washed all the bok choy, but I'm gonna put it back into my colander and rinse it again once or twice, because you wanna make sure with garden veggies that come straight from your garden, you wash them a lot, not because of pesticides or anything, but because there are lots of little bugs that love to hide in things like bok choy. It is the perfect little home for them, so we just wanna make sure that there's nothing hiding in tonight's dinner. That's really gross. You're not gonna wanna make this now. So to get started on tonight's dinner, I'm taking the washed bok choy and I'm just thinly slicing it, the white part and the green part, because everything is going to go in and it cooks down really easily. It becomes really tender when you just cook it in a skillet. So I'm using a whole bunch of it because there's a lot of water content in there, so it'll cook down just like any sort of green. And so I'm going to do 2 whole heads of bok choy and add that straight in along with the meat. So I've chopped up all of my bok choy here, the white part and the green part, and now we're gonna do some garlic and some fresh ginger. I'm gonna cut off a big chunk of ginger and then I'll scrape it with a spoon to get all the skin off, and then I'll probably just use a microplane and grate it right into the pan that I'm gonna use to cook this in. So to cook the meat, I'm using some steak and I'm cutting it into bite-sized pieces, kind of big chunks. That way they hold up against all that bok choy. And I'm heating my pan over medium-high heat because we want to get a nice, good sear on this meat. So we're going to cook it until it's about medium well, but I don't want to overcook it. I still want it to be nice and tender. And since we're cooking it pretty quickly in a pan, it's not going to slow cook down, so I don't want to overcook it. So I'll cook it for 3 to 4 minutes on one side, and then I'll season it with salt and pepper, flip it over, and do another 3 to 4 minutes on the other side until you see a nice dark brown exterior. Then I'll just remove it to a plate, and in that same pan with all those delicious steaky pan drippings, I'm gonna add the bok choy straight into that. I'm going to be serving this dinner of meat and veggies over some rice, and so I want to make sure that has a really delicious sauce. So I'm going to put together a really simple Asian inspired sauce. I'm using some coconut aminos, some raw honey, rice vinegar. I'm going to do a little bit of sriracha sauce. You can kind of use that at your discretion, whether you want it spicier or more mild. But I find with all the coconut aminos, it kind of just adds flavor without adding too much spice to where your kids couldn't eat it or something. So I'm going to add that in and stir in that garlic and ginger from earlier. And then I'll also make a little slurry just of some cornstarch and some water, or you could do cornstarch and a little bit of chicken broth or bone broth, and then we'll use that to thicken the sauce in a bit. Now I'm getting the bok choy into the skillet, and I'm just gonna let that cook down until everything's wilted. You don't want it to be super soggy, you still want it to have some good texture, but we just want a lot of that water content to cook out. Then I'll add in the sauce with the coconut aminos and the honey, and I'll heat that up for just a minute or two and stir in that cornstarch slurry, and immediately it's gonna start to thicken. The sauce comes together so quickly. You can do it anytime, any day of the week. You just stir it together, and a couple minutes later it's going to be nice and thickened. And if it thickens too much, you could just throw in an extra splash of broth or an extra splash of coconut aminos. Then I'll stir in that beautiful steak that I already had cooked, mix it all together, and then I'll serve this over some brown rice. But first I'm going to run out to the garden and grab some herbs to just top it off with and make sure everything's nice and fresh. When you're eating healthier or when you're just starting to grow your first garden and you have all this produce, it can be intimidating to figure out what to do with it on a practical level. So with all of this kale, there's like a pound or two of kale here. And so figuring out what to do with that can be a challenge. And so I always love coming back to older ways of cooking. A lot of times it's not the fanciest method of preparation or the most ingredients. It's really about finding good ingredients and simplifying how you cook them. So I have all of this beautiful dinosaur kale, and I'm going to take something as simple as a sweet onion and one other ingredient that's a little bit special, and then add that into a slow cooker and make this amazing dish that can either be served over rice as a main course or on the side of any kind of dinner to have a really nourishing big plate of greens on the side that's cooked down and going to be so easy to digest and full of flavor. Once I got all of my kale washed and chopped up, I put it in my slow cooker and I just poured over a little bit of chicken bone broth and added in that onion, and then I'm doing a little bit of sweet and vinegary. So I'm doing some apple cider vinegar and a tiny bit of coconut sugar just to balance it out and kind of give it like a sweet and tangy flavor. I love that with greens. It reminds me of putting like pepper sauce on them, and then of course salt. To make the kale almost like collard greens and similar to how you make a southern style collard greens, I have some pork ham hocks from the same farm I've been getting all my meat from, White Oak Pastures. I'll link it below because I know a lot of you are always looking for good quality meat, and theirs is the best. Trust me, I've tried a lot and they're by far the best. So I'm gonna put in these are really big, 2 huge pork ham hocks. These will cook down in the greens. They're gonna flavor everything almost like the way bacon would, but just a little bit different. And you can pull it out at the end. You can shred up the meat and put it back in there just like a southern style collard green. But this is a great way to use up kale from the garden or just kale from the grocery store, because dinosaur kale is so good to cook down like this. And I left all of those stems on that are just a little bit bigger. You can definitely de-stem it, no problem, but I left it on because once they slow cook and cook down, just like I remember getting collard greens from places like Cracker Barrel growing up, and they always have the stems on their collard greens. So I'm leaving them on there, and it's gonna slow cook down and be nice and tender anyway. And I figure, why not? More nutrients, more fiber. Let's put it in our slow cooker and see what we can do. I toss the greens so that it's all coated in salt to help it break down a little bit quicker. And then I added in those 2 pork ham hocks. And if you can't find good pork ham hocks, you could always substitute that with just a couple slices of bacon. As they slow cook, they'll start to render their fat down and just release all that flavor into the greens. So I'll put the lid on and let it slow cook for just a few hours. I think I ended up doing 3 or 4. And once it was all cooked, they were so just like luscious and soft, and they're delicious to eat just like this, or you could put them over a little bit of rice, have them with some chicken. There's so many different ways to serve this kind of meal, but it's a great side dish to have on hand anytime, especially this time of year though. Thanks so much for joining me in the kitchen.